Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Marvel Crisis Protocol War Table. This one completely focused on how we, as a team at AMG, create team tactic cards. So we're going to be talking about the whole process. I have with me our fabulous art director, Josh Cologne.
Hello.
And our lead Marvel Crisis Protocol developer, Ben Ransom.
Hey, everybody.
And between these two halves and a little bit of me as the plus sign in the middle, along with everyone else on the team, amazing artists, amazing graphic designers, and so many people who couldn't be here today because we can't fit them all on camera.
Yeah, sure.
We come together and we create the really awesome rules and art for what wind up being a cornerstone of the Marvel Crisis Protocol experience, which is the team tactic cards. So just to kind of give a brief overview, we're going to talk about the whole process. It might surprise you as to how team tactic cards are created, because a lot of people, I think, have assumptions on which comes first, the chicken or the egg, and we're going to actually tell you which one is first in this panel. So let's go ahead and just dive in and talk a little bit about the art process and what goes into creating the art for the team tactic cards, because in actuality, well, I think most people would assume that the dev rules come first and then the art is influenced by that. The way in which we've kind of established our team tactic card creation process is the opposite. Yeah. And we start with the art and the designs and everything behind that, the story that's inherent in the pieces that you do.
Right.
And from there, the dev team takes it and they
100%.
create rules around it that fit within the character and the character design. So while the characters are designed before the character artwork technically is really started, it's the opposite for these.
That's right.
So talk a little bit about how you wave your magic art director wand and create team tactic cards for everyone that they get to play with.
So there's that great question, and there's a lot to unpack there. So going back a little bit, I was thinking about this the other day. Originally, like old school, especially when we were just working on MCP, there was more of like a formalized version of making team tactic cards. There was a lot more, there was like a full meeting. I'm not to say we don't have meetings for it, but we had like exhaustive, I would almost say, discussions about like each and every single one, right? Mainly because we were trying to figure out the feel of the game, right? And because the team tactic cards, both artistically and in game-wise, are where you really get to push and go crazy and really go wild with a lot of stuff. That's the place where we were all learning about what you can get away with kind of in the game, right? So there was, a lot of, so it was kind of both for a long time, right? And it was sort of very sort of systematic. A few hundred team tactic cards later,
Not sure if it was that many, but there was a number of team tactic cards.
We learned our craft, we learned the process, the studio grew, right? Demands, increased. And again, because Schick and Dallas are, I want to make it impressive, they're very good bosses. They learned when to sort of step back and be like, okay, we trust you, all right? You've shown that you know the narrative, and you know what is looking for the foundation. So they gave me as art director pretty like
carte blanche,
freedom to pretty much the last few years, like if the cards are weird or you don't like them, hey, sorry. So literally,
Josh had a cool idea for art.
Yeah. So and then
the funny thing is that you don't actually inform anything about the rules development. You just come up with cool art pictures in your head about these characters.
That is true. That is very true. And but the dev is so good. The dev team and Ben are so good of taking that narrative and applying it to the thing. Sometimes I do think the weird narrative ideas do end up causing more trouble than they're worth. But
so whenever they are very, very weird, we'll usually try something really weird, and then if it doesn't work out, we can always just iterate into something that's less weird.
Right.
So that's it's not too big an issue whenever it goes very, very weird.
Good.
So walk us through the whole, what does an art director do day to day?
Right.
How do you go from crazy idea in your head to getting a finalized piece? Take people through your job.
So obviously,
explain to me what you do.
That's
what I want to know.
Finally, after 5 years. So obviously, first you and I know this seems obvious. You have to know what the product is, right? So you guys decide, okay, this is the pack, and it actually really is important, how things are paired up together, right? So if you're gonna do Sunspot, and Warlock, okay, great. We make tactic cards not just for each individual character, but also telling stories related to both of those characters or the team that they're related to, right? So it's really important we get from you how the characters are packed and where they're coming from, and yes, who's coming first and who may be coming down the pipeline, right? Because we do sneak in a few teasers.
There are a lot of teasers
Yeah,
hidden in
yeah.
the art many a time.
So once we have that, we do our research on these characters. We go to the old Marvel library and we read some of the key storylines. Another big important thing though too is you guys decide. Often, if there's multiple versions, a big history of the character, which one are we doing, right? Are we doing young Peter Parker? Are we doing, which Iron Man Mark armor are we doing, right? And that also informs what we're going to be pulled from. Once we get that, then you sit down and you make an art brief, right? Which is just a pretty simple document that explains, okay, what the name of the card is and sort of the idea, the narrative is trying to describe the characters, and sort of the theme and the feel of them, right? And then I'll pass them along to you guys as well as to Marvel, and you guys will give your notes and you'll approve them. Not to get too inside baseball, it's been there. I went crazy for a while, and so I did a lot of them in a row. So it's actually been a long time since I sent these guys any, because we have a backlog. We have a backlog of many tactic cards that are approved. Read in brief form, right? And then so once we get the Marvel okay and you guys is okay, then it's like, okay, now it's time to assign it to an artist. And to that, you figure out what artist is going to do the best job at sort of demonstrating the mood and the feel, and sort of honoring the storyline that it's drawn from. And occasionally also, we have artists that feel a little similar to the original artist a little bit, right? So we're able to play, sort of with those homages and have something from the 90s done by an artist that has a very 90s feel, right? Or something more modern or something more fun done by an artist, that's doing it more fun. Then we assign it. You give your deadlines, your sacrosanct deadlines, and then the artist, amazingly, they bring you back thumbnails, right? So they'll bring little sketches of the layout for how the art's going to look like in the card. We look at them, typically they're, and again, not to get too detailed, it depends on the artist. Typically, some of them are really different from each other. A lot of them are very...
Some look like napkin sketches, like just scribbles.
Right.
And you're like, I think that's a character. And
Exactly.
I think this is this. And some of them almost look complete.
Literally complete. And there's some that are very different, like from each other, like in terms of like ideation. But there's some that are very close, right? There's some to the point where it's just like, well, A or B, or even lately, I'm just like, we go straight. I showed Schick, and that was the pencil stage, because I'm just like, this artist was not going to do anything that was,
They had one composition.
Yeah,
that's
it's
the
just
composition
it.
they're doing.
Yeah, right. So from there we go to pencil stage. We do a very similar thing from like comics, right? So once you have the thumbnail, you go to the pencil stage. Once the pencils get approved, you go to inks, and then you go to sometimes flats, and then the color stage. The pencils are pretty key, because not only is that where you start getting proportion and stuff, that's where you start seeing like the anatomy, and that's where you start seeing like some more of the details. By the time you get to the inks, it gets a little harder to revise things, because they're like locked down. Even though it's digital, folks, it is, we work digitally. The artist puts so much detail and so much like effort into everything. We try to get as much nailed down in each previous stage as we can, and then we pass it along to our team to look at, including the other art directors too. Like the other, like not just the Marvel ones. Everyone looks at things and gives their feedback, and then eventually we get them approved, and then we give them the Marvel, and they love it all the time, always.
All the time.
Every
They
single
never have
time,
any
every
changes,
problems,
yeah,
and
exactly.
then once those are done, then and not always when they're done, but usually.
Sometimes we get them in that pencil stage, or sometimes we get it in the concept stage. Though rarely, usually it's somewhere after that.
Ben will be like, "Hey, this is the thing coming up. Send me the things," and I'm just like, "All right, here you go." Right?
Yeah.
And occasionally, I'll be very bold. I'll be like, "Hey, what if it worked like this?"
We generally talk about what the story points and what the idea you had for the card was, right? The sort of the concept, the narrative point that we're trying to recreate and trying to match the emotion and trying to match the theme of, right?
Right.
But we do operate pretty independently with using that as inspiration, right? So, I mean, if we have something we have an idea for a tactic card, sometimes we can just fit it into the box that you give us, and sometimes, but most of the time, using whatever you've supplied us as inspiration is a large part of getting a cool tactic card, getting good rules design, because we can really embody that moment that you're trying to that we're pushing in the art and the idea.
Well, let's jump into our first example, which is an Apocalypse Team Tactic card. We show the art during the survival, but we're going to show the rules now.
Right.
So, Josh, you talked a bit about the art. So let's just dive in and talk about, Ben, how did you, on the development side, look at the art, look at the story that Josh, and if you want to give a quick recap
Sure.
of what you're aiming for with this art piece.
Sure.
And if folks want a more in-depth look, they can go back to
yesterday's
our survival of the fittest panel, where we talked about these two in depth. But give us a quick recap of what you were trying to accomplish with the art, and then Ben, you can walk us through the example of exactly how you took this piece of art and Josh's little summary of it and turned it into an actual team tactic card with an effect for Apocalypse.
Right. So I mean, honestly, I remember, like a brief was almost exactly an homage to X-Men: Rise of Apocalypse #1, 1996. Apocalypse in the ancient days, and while his power's rising in his ancient costume, stands, solemnly in the sands of ancient Egypt. And then I give a list of theme words, the first one, the first one was later one of them, right? Agelessness, right? Rising power, right? Everlasting, right? And then just like solitude, right? And those were the kind of feels we were trying to go for. And then I gave it to Ben, and then Ben's like,
yeah, I mean, the art piece embodies that moving through the ages, and him holding the cloak in front of him is just very, very emotional. Seeing that character sort of take of him being so explicitly solitary and surviving, right? So we wanted to embody his survival through the ages, and him moving through knowing characters, right? Knowing people, and them going away during his lifetime, right? So that's how this got made. So the mechanics are you remove an allied character in order to make Apocalypse activate again.
wow.
Right. So this is him really churning on and embodying that survival, and he has
Outlasting his allies and outlasting,
Right.
yeah, right.
yeah.
That's brilliant. That's exactly, I mean, that's pretty.
So one of the interesting things about this card, right, is that there's that last line, which is if the character was injured, Apocalypse gains the stagger, so he gets half an activation effectively.
Right. Yes.
Unless he happens to be on his other side, I believe.
Yeah. So this
when
is,
he's immune to all conditions on his injured
in the
side.
rules. He's immune to all conditions on the other side, and that's really whenever he's on his injured side, he's really being that survival of the fittest, trying to completely show that he is immune.
And dominant.
But talk a little bit about, because I know that wasn't originally part of the card, that injured gains the stagger special condition. Talk about how some of the testing led to that, being kind of a balancing point for what is a very powerful card.
Yeah, I mean, we have a 6-threat character, and him activating another time is going to be very, very powerful. So we needed to come up with a downside, and we could make them pay more power, but what we wanted to do with Apocalypse was really emphasize what happens whenever he goes to the injured side, make him much, much more powerful whenever he gets injured, right? And this is one way that we had to emphasize that ability of Apocalypse. Of the front side of his card is scary, his healthy side is scary, but whenever he gets to his injured side, he's activating twice, and it's brutal.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I like how also through playtest this kind of developed the play pattern of you can burn this early to try to jump to an early advantage at a pretty big detriment because you're likely KOing a healthy character, right? You're dropping an activation in order to get a big explosive turn out of Apocalypse. Or you can hold on to this as a kind of a trump card for the late game when it's like, okay, I'm on my back foot. I need a big turn. I definitely don't need Toad to go again. So I'll just KO him and I'll bring that out. The other thing to consider with this card is that if you're playing within his affiliation, right, the character you're KOing is probably a horseman.
Probably.
So you're also giving away the horseman card and those abilities too.
Yeah, so you don't lose the horseman ability on Apocalypse whenever that happens, but you lose that horseman, which is the incoming evolution token. So it is a big deal, but this is a way so that we don't have Apocalypse degrade quite as much, where he stands strong even though his affiliation is failing him. Right. Like those characters are going away, but he's still standing strong. And that's,
ties right back into the art piece, right? And
so it's so tied explicitly to the theme that it's hard to break up, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's look at one more Apocalypse card and go through this process. And this one is Survival. So this is one of the ones that we've mentioned a couple times in some different panels as far as Josh getting crazy and throwing in every character he possibly can, plus an entire cityscape. And if you want to briefly kind of recap what you talked about in the Survival of the Fizz panel, like just the general concept behind this, and then we'll see how Ben and the team implemented it out.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, this was pretty self-explanatory. It's like, hey, we need a awesome Apocalypse beating people up illustration, right? We've got to show how powerful he is to the point of being able to take on basically an entire X-Men team by himself in that big, climactic moment, right? Where until the X-Men pick themselves back up and win the next fight, not this one. They're probably not going to be doing good. So yeah, I mean, this was really fun. These are fun because we try to be as open as we can with the art and with the art briefs to give Ben and the dev team freedom when we can. And this one was the ultimate of that. It's just like, hey, show Apocalypse being awesome and beating people up. How do you want to do that?
And then we completely said that, okay, this doesn't matter. We have an idea for this card, right? we had an idea for this card regardless of Apocalypse, right?
That's awesome.
So we just kind of fit it into the box.
That's awesome.
And I mean, this is very, mechanics first, right? That we whenever we were thinking about this, and less theme, much less theme first for this one.
Right.
But the inspiration of all these characters attacking Apocalypse. So what happens in game whenever a bunch of low threat characters attack a big threat character, a large threat character, is that Apocalypse will usually daze a character. Then because they have less activations, retain priority, and then KO that character before the injured character gets to go, and you spend all their power. So this helps counteract that play pattern. That if Apocalypse dazes a character, they can play Survival, which will make it so that character then can't be attacked that first activation, so can't be KO'd before they go and get to spend their power. Right. So this is the scene is playing out, and we use that as inspiration. But yeah, this is one of the cases where we kind of had an idea and we shoved it into the box that fit.
Yeah, I mean, I really do think, despite the fact that you already had this rules idea in mind, it perfectly fits with the scene, right? Because like you said, one of those X-Men characters is going down.
We wouldn't have done that if we didn't have a scene that made sense. But that sort of being flexible with the art and just making something that's awesome and just show something that's going to happen a lot in the game, means that we're able to swing that into imagery for the game and what and use that flexibly. Which is what we did.
Yeah, and it works both ways, right? Because Apocalypse is obviously, his whole theme is about survival of the fittest, and you can see using this on one of his horsemen who got knocked down to be like, I'm not done yet, boss. I can still go.
So yeah, we
I can do this.
very rarely make unaffiliated cards because we do want to tie things to theme, but this is just a very standard play pattern that we were able to identify and we're able to address.
All right, let's move away from Apocalypse and on to some new stuff.
Right.
Recently, right before Ministrav, the Sunspot and Warlock character pack was shown off. We're going to show a Team Tactic card from that pack right now, which is going to have a couple of spoilers. One is that there's a brand new affiliation coming in that pack, the New Mutants. And of course, as all new affiliations, they do typically get a couple of cards. Absolutely. So Josh, if you want to walk us through the art brief and idea and inspiration behind this, and then we'll let We'll let Ben give a few spoilers on the affiliation and how it functions so that he can better explain why the tactic card is the way it is. But maybe not give away all of the spoilers.
Sure.
We do have a roadmap for tomorrow.
Okay.
Well, yes. Yeah. So beginning from the art side, so when we were doing Warlock and Sunspot, particularly Sunspot, Roberto, we knew, okay, this is the time. We have X-Force, but people don't know, he did not start in X-Force. He was one of the New Mutants. And a lot of the 90s New Mutants they eventually became X-Force, which, says something. But we wanted to make, when it was decided upon they were going to be in its own affiliation, one of the first things that, Schick, Dallas, always work with Dev with is what is sort of the feel of that affiliation, right? How is that affiliation going to be different from regular X-Men or X-Force, right? And again, I got to say too much about it, but that informed and was informed by the comics, right? If you read New Mutants, they're supposed to be kind of like the second generation X-Men. They're they were the younger ones trained in the school, learning to, learning from the mistakes of the past of the X-Men, right? And one of the big themes of a lot of the New Mutants comics is them just literally surviving in really bad situations, like they're not quite as experienced as the X-Men, even though they're very powerful in their own right. It's literally just surviving the night. And so when that theme presented itself, I'm like, well, we have to do arcade. So we put, some of the classic members there, especially with magic, and we put them in Murder World. And it's a pretty nice little reference I think some comic fans will enjoy. And yeah, you even
so many levers in that image.
So many levers, and it was actually really fun working with the artists to figure out what arcade style murder traps you would have. Like we had to have the box clown with the knife to come out. Like that was just critical.
Buzzsaws from the ground.
Buzzsaws, you just have to do it, right? And arcade being happy in the background. So yeah, this was really trying to tell that story of,
I gotta say, as a kid who spent a lot of times in arcades in the 90s, I really appreciate how the levers are arcade joysticks.
Yeah, like legit, like, right? Because, he's gonna do it. He's having the time of his life, right? But yeah, so what we run and make sure that this felt like they're in trouble. We've got Rodrigo Lorenzo, who does a lot of our best environmental work, because it wasn't just about the characters, it's the scenario around them to show how much danger they're in and how they're going to survive. And then we threw that over to Ben, who, did this.
Well, most of the threat to characters comes from other characters attacking them. So
right.
That's what we made the response to. And this is the New Mutants getting to attack back and push away threats is a way that they can work together to survive the night together, right? So,
and as a slight spoiler, the leadership does really incentivize them grouping up.
Yeah, it enables them grouping up, right?
So
they're
range
able to
requirement within this card is kind of like baked right in.
Yeah, so their theme largely is working together, and
it's the buddy system, one might say.
The buddy system, yeah, and one being able to protect the other, right? So this reinforced that, and it's fit in quite nicely. So we could have done something with buzzsaws or something, but we didn't. It doesn't make any sense. We're making an arcade card. We're making a New Mutants card, right? So we needed them to reinforce their leadership and their themes, and that's what we did.
We can make buzzsaws on the ground later and some other things. We never know. You never know.
All right.
You never know.
So Josh, you always seem like a really nice, happy, joyful person.
Oh boy.
But you have a dark side.
Sure.
And that dark side does seem to come out whenever we start talking about Peter Parker, because you, sir, when we were talking about Mephisto,
right,
who's upcoming to the game,
you
demanded
I
on threat of resignation.
I actually did. Yeah.
That you be allowed to make this next card.
Yeah.
I think is a personal stab to myself, who has Mr. Peter Parker on the back of his arm here.
This is so gross.
So yeah, listen, like, I love comics.
Sorry.
I'm like a comic fan. I have strong opinions about comics, and I remember I read this storyline as it aired, as it published, and it had a lot of strong opinions, and I wanted to help reshare the pain that we all went through back in those old days.
When the best of couples was broken up.
Yeah, so
over Aunt May.
This is Brand New Day. Spider-Man readers.
And that Mephisto face in the background, I just want to point out, that was Josh. That's Josh's face. He took a self-picture when he was writing the art brief.
For reference. Yeah.
And for reference. He sent it to the artist. He's like, please capture this
maximum
joy.
cackle.
No.
Capture this joy that I have right now about making this card.
So, for those, may not know, Brand New Day is actually the name, the literal name of the storyline where Peter, Aunt May dies and Peter Parker is devastated, right? And so he, in a desperate move, makes a deal with Mephisto to bring back Aunt May, but at the cost of his marriage to Mary Jane Watson Parker. And so I thought it was really fitting for Mephisto. It's one of the biggest things he had done in sort of the last 15 years, a really important storyline. It really showed the theme of the character. We always try to throw Spider-Man in when we can. And also it led to a really beautiful piece of art by Patrick Brown. I mean, come on, this tells that story pretty well, huh? Like it's
a phenomenal piece of heart-wrenching art.
It really is. And I think it gave Dev quite a bit to play with in terms of really showing the evilness of Mephisto and how you never want to make a deal with him ever.
Yeah, so we were very fascinated by the Faustian deals that Mephisto can do, and
definitely baked directly into his character design all over the place, but then taken to another level with the tactic cards that you made for him.
Yeah, they get all kind of extra space here, and so we can do something that's pretty complicated. And so this is offering whenever one of the enemy characters gets dazed or KO'd, Mephisto gives them a choice, and the choice is you cannot be dazed and KO'd, and I benefit, or I benefit tremendously, or you can be dazed and KO'd, not accept my deal, and I still benefit. Right? So that's sort of I benefit either way.
It's very fitting.
Is very very Mephisto, and in particular his powers over bringing people back, as what we wanted to showcase here.
Yeah, and the Devil's Deal tokens, once you get a look at the character card, you'll understand just how powerful that is for him.
Absolutely.
And of course, giving him a complete heal and extra power is also really good.
So yeah, this is it's always.
But I love in playtest when you would, anyone who would play Mephisto, you knew you were in for a really rough game because you'd always have to make these choices.
Yeah, so he offers, Mephisto being on the table makes the opponent think.
Yep.
And there's no two ways about it, because he's going to offer you this deal, and you have to do something about it, because it is you have to think it through. Otherwise, you're going to get wrecked.
Yep.
Right. So this.
I think it tells the narrative in a game way that is so satisfying on both sides, right? Because you're when you look at the card and if you're on the opposing side of Mephisto, you can be like, there is no good option. But like you said, if you can kind of think through it and pick the lesser of the bad options and then come out on top. It makes the victory that much sweeter.
If we don't have a crazy, horrific, evil scene like this, we won't make a card that is like challenging your opponent to deal with the complexity of a devil's contract. Right? Like it's like a terrible, like it's a feel bad, like if we were designing this without this context, it would be absolutely miserable. But every time people are playing it, they're having a great time because they're cackling and they're Mephisto and their opponent is sad, but they're seeing a spectacle, right? Like, and so the context of the art and just lets us do things like this.
It's telling a story, which is ultimately the goal of MCP and the tactic card system in general.
Yeah, they're supposed to be those iconic moments from Marvel, right, and the universe, and so it's very cool. We're going to look at one more Mephisto card. This one, he doesn't necessarily give the deal to his opponents. He gives the deal to his allies.
Right.
So Mephisto can also bestow great power, but at a sneaky cost.
Absolutely.
So Josh, do you want to talk about this epic heavy metal album cover that we have here of Mephisto?
So yeah, one of the, I am given freedom, but so I do get demands, and one of the demands I got from my creative director, Dallas Kemp, was if Mephisto isn't on a throne of skulls in one of these art pieces, you're doing a horrible job. And so I'm like, all right, let's do it. And so, yeah, we ended up with what is literally the most heavy metal piece of art probably we've ever done for Marvel Crisis Protocol.
You even went out to the great Dan Mora to do this,
the
right?
superstar Dan Mora. And so, yeah, I gave him the brief, and I gave him notes too of like, it's so hard to design a throne of bones, so it can just be a scary looking throne with some bones on it, right? And he's just like, no, don't worry about it, I got it. And he just came back with, I mean, literally turning spines and rib cages into, like, literally it's a throne made out of skeletons. The only non-skeleton thing is the knives in the background that are just kind of there.
You need a support structure, put your bones on.
And it is just ended up being like kind of jaw-dropping, and we were just floored, and we were also maybe a little nervous. We were like, man, I hope Marvel does.
It's probably one of the more intense scenes that we have done within the game, but it perfectly sells Mephisto as, the Lord of Hell in the Marvel universe.
And we got we were worried we get some pushback from Marvel. They gave us compliments. They were just like, wow, this is actually a really good piece of art.
Yeah.
And so so it's one of the things I'm most proud of. And we do, just going to throw that out there to our friends in marketing. Like, this is like giant size. We can make very big banner size of this if you want. Or poster size if you want it. That's all I'm going to say. And then, then Dev does what it does.
So, we got a very metal piece of art.
Yeah.
So we had to kind of bring it. And we had some space because of the more complex Mephisto cards to make something that's a little more straightforward, and that is him using his Hellfire and just incinerating everybody around. Right. So this is unaffiliated. We ended up having to adjust the cost up from where we had initially placed it, because it is a very powerful effect that you can just put anywhere you're playing Mephisto.
Right.
So we had to work this into his play pattern a little more, where we had to take into account what happens if we stack this with, say, all webbed up, which has a very similar effect.
Right.
And or what happens whenever we stack this with some of the most attrition-centered teams at the time. Whenever we were testing it, we were testing with like Corvus and Proxima quite a bit, because they can spend the Incinerate tokens to reroll all their attack dice is what they can do, and getting priority with those and being able to attack with both of them before taking the penalty of the Incinerate token was really, really powerful. So we had to make sure that this didn't break that. Whenever we did enough testing to get it to the right point to where it's still very, very compelling, and it shows just the raw power of Mephisto, which ends up being really,
we
really
talk
nice.
a lot about how, as Team Tactic card design and development kind of progressed, right? They started as these team-up moments where we would get two characters, and some of them still do that, where you see iconic pairings between characters working together to do something. But they also became kind of a tool to say, here's this bonkers kind of dream moment, this climactic moment for the character to do something that really showcases their unlimited power of whichever the character is, right? It's kind of their solo comic book moment.
Absolutely.
And the tactic card format, because it's once per game, and we can kind of like really heavily balance the effect versus the cost and all of that. And there's opportunity cost additionally, because you only get so many of them.
Right.
It really lets you do these things where it's like almost ultimate encounter levels of power.
Yeah, so we get to see that Mephisto on the big screen.
Yep. Yeah. It's every character needs that one moment where it's just like, whoa, and everyone's like, oh my gosh. And then we go back kind of to the balance of everything else. So it's very cool. And I can't wait for people to see Mephisto and all that he can do. There's one more Team Tactic card in his kit, and if you want to see what that is, you can join us for the roadmap tomorrow. We're going to be showing off the final one, which is also pretty fun. So that brings us to the close of our discussion examples and the new stuff that we have to show off. But we do have another important little piece to this whole panel, and that is the fact that Josh has made, I don't know, like 300, 400 some Team Tactic cards at this point. It feels like, I don't know if all those are released, but they're definitely in the works.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And of course, the game continues to evolve and grow. One of the things as players, and you all probably know, is that we do a rotation every year, and effectively we use that to kind of adjust things. If you want to talk a little bit more about what the point of the rotation is and how we kind of come to that, feel free. And then once Ben has kind of explained the process, we're actually going to look at the new rotation list, so all the cards that are rotating out. And we have a couple other surprises that go along with that, including 2 new Team Tactic cards that you're going to be able to download with all the documents for the rotation and everything else that are going to be going up right after this panel. So go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, so with card rotation, we generally want to reduce the complexity of having as many generic Team Tactics cards. We have a lot of that it got introduced at the beginning of the life cycle of the game that were there to fill the gap so that people had things that they could play with any of the teams, because there just weren't as many options, as many characters and cards. So those unaffiliated cards that have had a lifespan that we want to at some point put it into, right? And get to a more lean list of these unaffiliated cards that are serving the roles for the game that we really want them to serve, right?
And it primarily, a lot of the rotated cards that you'll see are unaffiliated, but there are some affiliated cards on there as well.
Right, yeah.
For example, spoiler alert, Crew of the Milano is wound up on there.
That's right.
And some of, and I think, it's a great way for us to be able to address as the game progresses, as new characters come out, as new options come out.
Yes.
Crew of the Milano, when it came out, was considered a very underwhelming card.
That's right, yeah.
But now, in an era where there are more 6 threats, there are even more affiliated like characters, suddenly condition removal.
So we,
right.
I guess the vision for the Guardians of the Galaxy, like the original Guardians of the Galaxy, was a bunch of low-threat characters, but then it is Marvel Cosmic, and so we are getting a lot of high-threat characters, and the high-threat characters are absurdly effective with Crew of the Milano. So that's sort of like difference in our perception of where Guardians are and where they should be. Has changed over time.
And additionally, they've gotten a number of new Team Tactic cards from the additional releases that have come out as well,
100%.
right?
So they have plenty of options that they can play. So we've developed enough to where removing Crew of the Milano from the standard rotation means that the game's a little healthier, and you still have plenty of options of what you can do.
Yeah, and the other thing to always remember about rotation is that things can rotate out and rotate back in.
Of course,
right?
Yes.
So there may be a point at which Crew of the Milano comes back. It's a great way to kind of shape tactical options, strategic options, roster building options. And I think it's one of those ways, it's a really good tool that we knew at the start, even before the game launched. Those original documents had rotation, restricted ban lists, all of those things baked in because we knew
the game is living.
The game is living, and the other thing was we knew we were just going to keep making cards.
Yeah.
Right? And so at some point you kind of have to have a way to prune and trim and do these different things to ensure the game is healthy, like you talked about. So let's take a look at the list for the rotation. I don't know if there's anything specific outside of, again, there are a couple. So the 2 in yellow we're going to talk about specifically. But if there's anything just overall you want to talk about with the rotation or kind of some of the design thoughts, if you don't, you can just be like, pass, and we'll move on.
No, we can talk a little bit of like the Age of Ultron. I mean, we wanted to see that play out. We decided to not take any sort of moves on that, and we play tested it completely with the new Ultron, but we've seen that the community has gone pretty crazy with it, and it's been very, very powerful. We instead of we knew that we could take action later if it was a problem, and it turns out that it probably was a little bit too strong, right? So this is one of the things that rotations give us.
Yeah, and then a couple other things like Eyes on the Prize, I know has been elevating certain characters above where they really should be without that card. So
Eyes on the Prize, a Beta Ray Bill thing. Yes.
Advanced R&D, obviously, another one that has caused. I I don't want to say issues necessarily, but has definitely pushed certain play patterns or other things.
100%.
And the goal here, as we talked about, is to kind of trim, redefine some of the meta and the play patterns and see what happens. There's every possibility that, Age of Ultron does come back because we see things shift out or other these
100%.
cards.
Yeah.
But it is a kind of a new world. I do want to now discuss the two in yellow, so Deception and Exceptional Healing. The reason they're in yellow is that they are rotating out, but as they are cards that are kind of intrinsic to the value of the characters that can utilize and take them, we are actually introducing two brand new Team Tactic cards that effectively replace them with new effects. So go ahead and talk us through the replacement for Deception first, which is Stolen Identity.
Yeah. So, give me Tony. We have
Sleeping on the job yet again, Tony.
Stolen Identity. So Deception, the main play pattern that we wanted to stop with Deception was the round one play of kidnapping a character that had interacted with the scenario and getting them into the middle of your team and just getting a very advantaged state by just removing that character, right? So what we did is just make it so that a character needs to have not have an activated token to be affected by Stolen Identity. And what we saw that in testing, seeing that she's still able to use it for her terrain explosion ability. She's still able to use it to set up and distract characters, and still feels very, very thematic to her. And it fills largely the role of Deception without that largely negative play pattern.
It provides a bit of counterplay too, right? Because if you're really concerned about Mystique messing with one of your characters, you can just simply activate before she has the chance to play this card.
Right.
And the activated token protects you from the card, but also means that you're not going to be able to react for the rest of the round with the character. So I think it does open up good counterplay that wasn't really there with Deception in the way in which we saw it utilized and played.
It's also just really fun whenever you move a character, especially a fast-moving character, very far out of position, and then they look all bamboozled, and they have to run back into
Quicksilver,
position.
why are you in the corner? You told me to be here. What do you want?
Right. So we see that sort of gameplay where Mystique tells somebody that the objective's over there, and it feels it's been fun. Yeah.
All right, and let's take a look at the other card in yellow's replacement, which was Exceptional Healing is now being replaced with Instant Recovery. And this, of course, has a much wider impact than just one character. This is going to impact every character with Healing Factor. And go ahead and talk to us about the change, some of the thought process behind it, and where we're going with it.
Yeah, so what we saw, the play pattern with Exceptional Healing and now Instant Recovery is that it stops those Healing Factor characters from getting dazed as easily, and then whenever they activate next, they heal back damage from surviving. So it's kind of a duplicate. It saves you damage immediately, and then it saves you damage because you get to activate it again, right? So that sort of stacking is something that we really need to watch because it's sort of multiplicative, where that if the effect that's saving you is too powerful, then it can just completely swing the game, right? So those Exceptional Healing moments were just a little bit too consistent, too prevalent, and so
especially with the expanding cast of Healing Factor characters, right?
Right.
I mean, when Exceptional Healing was introduced, there was Wolverine and Sabretooth.
Yep. Right. And seeing a big dice spike, which can be like a very exciting part of the game, just get trimmed off with Exceptional Healing down to 1 damage. Just removed a lot of the excitement, and took away a lot of the incentive to attack those characters altogether, which was just not as fun of a play pattern as we wanted, right? And so making this a little lighter so that the characters heal and are more harder to take down with multiple attacks. And still has that sort of stacking multiplicative. If you survive, then you survive harder with your Healing Factor later, and so it's still very, very powerful. But yeah,
I was going to say, importantly, you play the card after the effect is resolved, so it's not going to stop you from that from getting one shot or
It
getting to
won't
that
stop you
stage,
from
right?
getting one shot,
You have to
yes.
survive the hit, then you can heal a little bit back from the hit.
Yeah, which feels very just the timing of that feels good as well, where the character does get a big hole in them and then heals up.
Right, absolutely. Cool. Okay, well, so again, the card rotation document, the errata document that includes those 2 new cards, which are going to be legal for play right after this, alongside the rotation, and several other documents for Marvel Crisis Protocol. I think the Challenger document got some
That's
updates
right,
as
yep.
well to go along with the new rotation. All those are going to be posted on the website, atomicmassgames.com, right when we say goodbye, which is right now. So we're going to say goodbye. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into how we create Team Tactic cards. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're excited for what comes next. And, of course, join us for the Marvel Crisis Protocol Roadmap tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I believe I'll have both of you there along with me. So till tomorrow. Goodbye.
Thank you, friends.